Lift up your gaze, be lifted up. Tell everyone how great the love come down from heaven's gate to kiss the earth with hope and grace. Sing, who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. Lift up your hands, be lifted up. Let the redeemed declare their love as we bow down at heaven's gate to kiss the feet of hope and grace. Sing, who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. There is one God, He is holy. There is one God over everything. There is one King, He is Jesus, King of glory, strong and mighty. There is one God, you are holy. There is one Lord over everything. There is one King, He is Jesus, King of glory, strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord, you're strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord strong and mighty. And I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted. You were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Let's do that again. 'Cause I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted because you were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you, 'cause I'm forgiven were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your Spirit is within me, because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you in all I do. I honor you. You are my King. You are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my joy, die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true. And it's my joy to honor you. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you in all I do. I honor you. Jesus, you are my King. Jesus, you, there it is, are my King. Jesus, you are my King. Jesus, you are my King.
pour out our only one. Quick. Old Steve up this morning. What happens when he's not here? Loses. Hey, welcome again, everybody. I'm so happy to be joined online with the line. And I hope this morning is going to be a blessing the way that it is to yet another day that we come together, worship together, get to have a good day together. And I hope, my prayer is that we never take this for granted, right? Like churches across the world, us, have taken meeting together every Sunday for granted. Generations, right? And then we got hit with a section of time that we weren't able to get together in person. And while I hope that never happens again, I also hope we don't take it for granted and always appreciate the fact that we get to be here today, the fact that we worship together in public, don't have to worry about imprisonment or real person. That's such an amazing thing that we get to come together and acknowledge that we are Christians. We are blessed to live in a country that allows this, right? We are very blessed to live in a country that currently allows open worship and openly the realities of the gospel. But that may not always be the case. Let's just not take it for granted while it is, right? Let's just be excited and let's use this opportunity that we have to love God first, love others second. And that's the whole idea. This week, I was shown some interesting things, and I was reminded about some things. I spend a lot of my time throughout the week at various passages, various articles on passages, thoughts on passages, and because I want to understand how it applies to our lives. But I can get up here, tell you, hey, here's what I learned, and maybe you'll take a little nugget from the 2-hour-long sermon I have. As a pastor, I also spend a lot of time looking at politics, looking at health, and so that I can understand how all of that impacts us as a culture, right? Because all of these things impact us as a culture. And I have stood up here in the past, and I'll continue to stand up here and talk about the importance of unity, talk about the importance of family, and of staying unified as a family, how we are called to be unified in the Lord, right? Even if we disagree on everything else, called to be unified in the Lord. We serve one God. I spent some time on Facebook in my daily videos. Those of you that don't know, every single day, most every single day, I get on Facebook for anywhere from 5 to 10 and just put out a thought, just some not really random. I mean, it's based on I try to make it fit what's going on in our culture at that moment, just to refocus our minds on Christ and nothing else. So I've spent some time saying the same thing in daily videos, talking about how we need to abide the Lord. And this week, something happened, and I got involved in a conversation. Now, I don't typically get involved in public online conversations. They're generally not helpful, right? Like, you're not going to change someone's mind. It's not going to happen. You might yell at each other, you might get mad, you might get offended, but minds aren't going to be changed. As a matter of fact, what frequently happens is feelings get hurt, public or personal attacks become relationships end up being broken, right? Not beneficial. However, this week I saw a post of someone very close to me I read the comments of posts of people that were very close to me, and they were attacking people. So people that I care about were attacking other people that I care about. And so I felt that I needed to get in and say something. I was convicted that I needed to attempt to bring the midst of unhealthiness. So I stepped into the conversation. Now you won't find it online because I deleted this conversation because it turned into vile remarks, cursing, personal attacks, and so I removed it because it's not beneficial for those types of words to be out there, and so I took it out. And I have to say, I was beginning, as the personal attacks began to fly against other people I care about, I was beginning to get upset. You guys ever felt that? Like somebody's just saying something, maybe it's not your spouse, about your kids, and you kind of feel your blood begin to boil, right? And lash out, you want to protect, you want whatever. Well, I felt myself beginning to get upset. And then I remembered what I've been reading in Scripture. I remembered what I've been talking about from Scripture. And so it was an easy opportunity for me to respond in ways and talking about that we actually on. So I stepped back and I invited conversation. I invited someone to have a personal conversation, not just public spot where they could just lodge insults and things. And as a result of this, one of the people that I pretty much had a broken this person allowed me to have a conversation with them, private conversation with this person, and we talked about some things, and it was really interesting because in the midst of this conversation, the person said to me, look, I don't agree with your views, so we're never going to agree about anything else. I said, well, serve the same God, right? You agree on that? Yeah, I agree on that. I said, so let's start there. Let's start in the fact that we have the same Lord, have the same God. We don't have to have the same political ideas. We don't have to have the same theological ideas in every aspect, but we agree that we serve the same God. And she's like, okay. And so that was awesome. And so we began, at that point, from a place of mutual respect and honor with each other and mutual understanding that we're the same God. And then we're able to, from there, build a relationship so that we no longer have a broken relationship with the person. And I think that was awesome because now in the future, we can continue to build that relationship, bring unity to these people that I deeply care about. Now, all of this happened while I was trying to study for, and so my mind was very fluttered, right? I'm Scripture, and then I get a ding. Someone tells me that this was said, and so I felt compelled to say something. So I opened up the passage again. I read something at the very beginning of Genesis 2, and it says that the Lord tested Abraham. Now, let me ask you a question. Show of hands, who here, when you were in school, if you can remember back that far for some, when you were in school, who here enjoyed getting tests? Enjoy tests, anybody? Those smart people? Sherry? All right, Sherry, she's Beth. Okay, so a few nerds in the room. Those of you online, you feel free to just jump in and tell us how nerdy those that enjoyed tests are. Here's the problem with tests. When you get tested over a particular topic and you pass, now it's going to get harder because now you're going to get new information and then you're going to be tested on that. And then you're going to get new information and you get so that every time you pass a test, you're setting yourself up for another test. That's why my motto is just fail all tests. And then you never have to learn anything. Great, no, I'm just kidding. I only failed some tests. But I was never one to enjoy tests. I remember in high school, I had a math teacher. I don't want to say hated me, good guy, but he disliked what I did. You see, he set up math class so that essentially all of the weight of the grades were on the tests, and the homework counted for nothing. Well, if you think like me, and homework counts for nothing, why do it? There's 0 point to doing any homework at that point. So I would never do my homework, and he would get upset at me, and then I would have the test that week. I would ace it because I knew the material. And he's so mad at me. And I said, well, your system, just using it, right? So that's how much I don't like tests. He got upset at me, but generally, I don't like tests. And tests, they put you on the spot, right? Like, you got to know what you know now, right? Because if you don't have the knowledge to get past in this moment, be in trouble, right? You're going to have to, if you're in college, you're going to have to pay to take the class again. Elementary school, you're going to have to put held back. High school, you're going to have to repeat that class. That's not an enjoyment. But I think the majority of us, except people, would agree that tests are no fun. Then we grow up and adults, right? And we think like the last test you take in college or high school, whatever educational level you're at, the last test you take, you think, done. I never have to take another test. And then you get a job. and the test is the interview, right? And then you have to prove that you know the things you claim to know, and then you maybe further your experience level. And so you're going to have to take a one-day seminar, which takes another test at that. Or maybe you have to do continuing education, depending on the field you're in. Constantly are having to take tests. Our whole lives, kids, your whole life filled with tests. One test after another. And they're different. They're different types of tests. What about from a biblical perspective? Is it possible that we're ever tested on our faithfulness? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Well, based on Genesis 20. First, we said absolutely it's possible because God tested Abraham. So absolutely it's possible to be tested from a biblical perspective. I can think of a few times in my life where I believe I have been tested based on what I was claiming of God in my life. And so I was tested on my personal walk. The conversation that I had, likely, looking back on it, I believe, maybe that was a test. Maybe God was saying, okay, Billy, you're talking about this so long, are you going to actually do it? Hopefully, God would bypass that part of the test. I don't know where his grading lies, but I hope I did okay. Because my focus was in that conversation. Look, we are unified. We care about each other. Lord. Bad news is that now that means I have to learn stuff, I guess, so that he can test me something new. Today we're gonna look at Abraham. Abraham asked, sacrificed. Sounds crazy from our perspective. I'm not going to have all of the verses. They're on the Bible app, are in your Bible. I'm going to look at the entire chapter of chapter 20. Some verses are going to be up on the screen. as we circle back around. But start off with this. Let's open up to Genesis chapter 20. And I'd like us to, if we understand the perspective of Abraham, understand the perspective of God, what's going to happen as we, I hope we're going to be able to begin to see how God does, in fact, test us. So join with me, Genesis chapter 21, for just a little bit of catch up. The birth of Isaac. Isaac has been the promised child to Abraham. Abraham's old. Isaac is born. Okay, so join us. That's where we're at. Chapter 22, starting in verse 2. It says, after these things, God tested Abraham. Said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his young men with him, son Isaac, and he cut the wood for the burnt offering, rose and went to the place which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes, saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship, come again to you. And Abraham took the wood and the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went, both of them together, and Isaac said to his father, my father. He said, here I am, son. He said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself a lamb for a burnt offering. They both went together. When they'd come to the place which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there, laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar and on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his knife, water his. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, here I am. He said, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him, a ram caught in the field by a thorn. Abraham went and took the ram, offered it up as a burnt offering. Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide. As it is said on the mount of the Lord shall be. The Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven, said, by myself I have sworn, because you have done this, have not withheld your son, your own, I will surely bless you. I will multiply your offspring as the stars in heaven, as the sand that is on the sea. Your offspring shall possess the kingdom. In your offspring shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because have obeyed. So Abraham returned to the young men, arose and went together to and Abraham. After these things it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah has borne children to for us, his brother, Samuel, the father of Hazo, Pildash, Diplah, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Becca. 8, Milcah bore to Nathan, brother. Moreover, his concubine, who Remuah, bore Tilba, Gama, Tahash, and Ka. Pray for us. Father God, thank you. Passion. So we see verses off as God tested it. Right off the bat, God is testing. No, what's going on. And in this test, we can see God is very clear which son is supposed to be sacrificed. Supposed to sacrifice Isaac, the son he loved, as another not Isaac, that was a son of sin. But in this case, the Lord is telling him, sacrifice the son he loves. Now, that is unthinkable. Like, why in the world, why would that ever be a remote possibility that God would ask someone to sacrifice a son? A human, that's just not a thing that we comprehend. However, in that culture at that time, sacrifice actually was commonplace. They would actually take their babies, red hot altar, sacrifice their babies to God. Therefore, proof they held nothing back to God that they. So this was symbolizing complete, total devotion to their God. Clearly was a false God. This clearly not the God. However, in that culture, it was commonplace. And so Abraham sees this as, okay, well, I've never had to do this. Never. True, God wanted that, but that's what the other gods want. So, well, move in that direction. Maybe that's what he's thinking, but I think there's actually something more impactful going on. Let's take a look at what's going on, because what Abraham gets, how much do I love God? I've aped son Isaac. How much do I love God? Do I love God more than the thing that I love the most? I love God more than that. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, love God more than anything else? We're honest. Or is there something tugging? Have to realize that loving more than God. Take a look at our current church. As a global church, and I'm talking about LRBC, but the global church, have we come to the point of loving our building more than we love our God? And I ask you that is because when March happened, February happened in parts of the globe, and people were kicked out of churches because it was no longer safe in the environment, and churches fell apart. Like local bodies fell apart. They didn't know how to exist without the four walls of the building. Well, if that's the case, are we idolizing the building? Are we seeing our building as a tool to reach across, or are we see the building as this? There's a reason that I never use words like the church is closed, or we're going to reopen the church. We're going to come back to the church. The church was never closed, not a building, right? But as a global church, have we come to a point where buildings are idolized? I think in some cases that's true. What about our rights here in America? Is called the land of the free for a reason. Have more freedom, have more liberty than any other country in the world, and we are blessed to be citizens of America. Have we taken those rights, have we liberties, as a thing to be placed higher in our devotion to our God? Is it more important that I'm free, or is it more important that I believe in Christ? Which one is actually the most important? If I have to put down my freedom, if I have to set aside my freedoms in order to fully follow Christ, am I willing to? That's a question I have to ask ourselves. Frankly, it's being asked of us, right? In a lot of sense, a lot of states, it's being asked of us. So am I willing to follow Christ that way? Would you be willing to sacrifice your rights? That's what you were called to do. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm not in any way saying that as Christians in this moment we are called to lay down all of our rights, but I'm saying if that were the case, would we be willing to, or would we struggle with that? Would that be one that we would have to maybe personally be able to set your limits? That's a question that we all have to reflect on, personal level. What is it important to distract us? Is there anything in our lives that is important enough to distract us, followers? Our parents, our homes. I don't know what it is. Is there anything in your life as you begin to process what level am I being obedient to God? Is there anything in your realm that you would have to be honest with yourself and say that I struggle with God above? If that's the case, know what you need. Go to God and say, God, I've been putting this ahead of you. That's not what I'm going to give it back to you. And it doesn't stop there, because Abraham's response is amazing. So God says to Abraham, sacrifice your son that you love. And Abraham's response is that he obeyed God. Got up and said, okay, let's make it happen, because I'm not going to withhold anything. Starting in verse 3, we see that Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled up to leave. The literal translation of this would be, he arose and went. There was no, okay, God, we need to negotiate this. Okay, God, how about I just cut his arm off? How about we just sacrifice a hand? I can keep the rest of him. Okay, God, well, I hear what you're saying, and I'm willing sacrifice him, but how about first let him live for 35 years, and after 35 years we can sacrifice him after I've gotten to know him. But there was none of that. He arose and he went. Now there's other passages in Scripture that negotiate with God, and they quite the same way. In this instance, no negotiation. Got up, voted, and verse 5, some kind of amazing faith or sheer defiance. I don't know which it is. Well, I do know now because I've continued reading. But in the moment, as you read this, okay, so Abraham said to his young man, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again. So either Abraham has tremendous faith that he believes that somehow God either is going to provide a sacrifice, a real sacrifice, or that God is going to bring Isaac back from the dead. One of those things, because Abraham just said, the boy and I are coming back to you, or Abraham has absolutely no plan on actually sacrificing Isaac. One of those two things has to be based on Abraham. Well, I guess, or he could be lying. Maybe he's lying. Abraham seems to have some sort of faith or some sort of defiance. What Abraham is doing, because Abraham is known throughout Scripture as being a man having right here the faith that he has, because he has given Isaac. God gave Isaac specifically as a child of the promise, of a blessing. And that blessing has not been realized yet. But somehow God told Abraham, look, I'm going to bring a huge blessing to Isaac. Okay, look, I want you to sacrifice Isaac now. So Abraham has to be thinking something, and he has to be thinking, okay, God made a promise, and I know that God does not promises, that he always fulfills his promises. Therefore, something amazing is going to happen. This has to be what's going through Abraham's mind. As a matter of fact, in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 17 to 19, it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring. He considered that God was even able to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive back. So Abraham's faith is such that, okay, I'm going to sacrifice Isaac because that's what God's calling me to. But I know, because I believe God, because God said that this blessing is coming to Isaac. So because of that, I know that Isaac will be brought back, that God's going to bring him back, that something miraculous is going to happen. Abraham has that kind of faith. That through a little glimpse into his mind. That tremendous faith. Now, this is because how often get faced with knowing the promises of God, maybe thinking applies to something. Oh, God said he's going to provide for everything, but better take things. How often do we not actually have faith? I don't believe for 1 second that Abraham was happy about being asked to sacrifice his son. Because even though Abraham has the faith that Isaac is going to come back, I'm assuming, okay, this is not written in the text, but I do believe as a father, not want to inflict on his child. So he's not happy about this fact, right? But he trusts God enough. This isn't an easy test. But Abraham had so much faith, the fact that God does keep his promises, able to get to that point. Look at this innocent question from Isaac. Look at what happens. Interaction with Isaac and Abraham. It says, hold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb, the burnt offering? This little Isaac, Dad, fire, wood, sacrifice. What is Abraham's response? God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. The word provide actually shows about this entire word, or this entire chapter. This word provide, this little interaction is actually a turning point where we see the faith of Abraham, not some crazy old man. Not somebody that's 100 years old and clearly just, doesn't need driving anymore. Like, that's not who Abraham is. Clearly has some amazing faith, because literally Abraham is telling Isaac that God will look, that God will provide for the lamb at the exact time that we need the lamb. That God's going to put the lamb in the exact place that we need. Now, Abraham doesn't know if he will in fact have to sacrifice Isaac. Abraham doesn't have that answer. What we do know is that Abraham has the faith so that God will watch out and that God will fulfill promises. What we do know is that God is going to provide exactly what is needed in order to fulfill worship. That's what we do. And then look at what happens. That God provides, because Abraham has Isaac tied up, and he's bound him up, placed him on the altar, is ready. He has the knife the neck, ready to spill the blood from his throat, and an angel of the Lord called out to him to stop what he was doing at that moment. Like he's ready to go, ready to fulfill the commandment. And then the angel of the Lord calls out and says, look at what he says. He says, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. There's something really interesting. The angel of the Lord has just Abraham fear of the Lord, which is more literally desire to obey. The angel has just commended Abraham for that. Then he says that he has not withheld his son from him. Catch that. The angel of the Lord said, you have not withheld your son from you have not withheld your son from God. You have not withheld your son from me. So interesting, because many scholars would actually say that the angel of the Lord in the Testament is typically referring to the incarnate. This is Jesus before his incarnation in Matthew. But this is Jesus talking and interacting with the Old Testament. Actually, look at what he says. Look at what he actually says. John chapter 8, verse 50. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. But glad. So Jesus is talking to a bunch of people saying, look, your father Abraham, the guy that started this whole nation, Father Abraham, rejoiced to get to see in my day, and he got to see. Now that created a whole controversy. John, we can talk about that another time. Through this story of obedience, sacrifice, the picture of the sacrifice, obedience, God the Father. The sacrifice of God to sacrifice his only loved Son. Right? We have the obedience of Jesus being willing to stand and allow this to happen. Look at Isaac, how Isaac stood there, allowed his father to tie him up, put him on the altar. So we have this obedience. Isaac was a willing sacrifice because he had faith in the Father. The willing sacrifice had faith. See this beautiful illusion, our ultimate, the ultimate sacrifice. And all this happened. The result is that Abraham was provided with the perfect sacrifice that was caught in the bushes in order to be substituted sacrifice. Abraham was provided for the perfect sacrifice. At the point that at that point, Abraham gave the mountain a very special name, very unique. He did this because he wanted to remember the fulfilled promises of God. And so the name of the mountain is verse 14. It says, so Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide. He said to this day, on the mount of the Lord shall be. Lord will provide is a translation thought. Jehovah Jireh. God will provide. Jehovah Jireh. When things just don't seem working the way I want them. Jehovah Jireh. When my paycheck just wasn't quite as big as I was hoping it was going to be. Jehovah Jireh. When we don't hold our commitment. Whatever that commitment. Jehovah Jireh means God will provide. But when Beth and I Colin 9 months after that. He had just gotten home from the hospital, and I went to the store. And while I was in the store, we had all of the baby car. Like, I got home, I dropped Beth off at the apartment. I went to the while we're in the store, the car, I come out with groceries, basket full of. I no longer have a car. The car was stolen in the parking lot. And that devastated. I had a rough time with that. But we're attending a church at that time, obviously, connected with someone. And I'd heard about a guy that was selling a car, and it was a car. And so I contacted him, and I was like, hey, tell me about your car, because I need one. Right? And he tells me, okay, well, it's $4,000, 90 Saturn something, sports car kind of. Well, I was like, awesome, newest car I've ever owned, because 2005-year-old car. I felt fancy. So I tell him, I'm like, all right, well, let me see what I can do up with that kind of cash. And then, well, about a few weeks passed by, and finally I had to call him, and I had to say, look, I can't come up with cash. Don't hold it for me. Sell it to somebody else. And I had been working some extra jobs and things, trying to come up with some cash. Just couldn't do it. So he said, okay, well, Billy, how much? Like, I've got $500 in the. In the course of our talking, said first, he said, okay, $500, that's fine, just 500. Kidding me. And then in the course of our conversation, actually, keep the 500. I'm just going to give you the car. I said, are you insane? And this response, he said, Billy, when you and I were first talking, just in the hallway of the talking, somebody walked by, and I overheard the words Jehovah Jireh. And at that moment, I just felt convicted that you are supposed to have this. So, to have this car. Thought, wow, don't just he still owed money on the car. So he's still making payments. Hopefully not. But he was still making payments on the car at that time, but he felt so convicted. God was communicating to him that God was going to use him to provide for our needs. I was convicted that God was somehow going to provide our needs. So it was cool to see how that fit together. That stuck with me. I mean, that was 17 and a half, something like that. Colin is some age, over 60. So this morning, I want to ask you a few questions this morning as we close out. I want to ask you if you're willing to be all in for God. You individually, are you willing to be all in for God? Are you willing to be fully committed and withhold nothing? God didn't ask Abraham to go up, almost sacrifice Isaac. He didn't say, would you go up and pretend to sacrifice Isaac? He told him, he commanded him to sacrifice. Tested if Abraham would indeed have the faith to step into the next phase of life that's coming. To the next phase of life where God is going to continue to work. But did Abraham have the faith to take that next step, to pass this test? Abraham have the faith to teach Isaac the truth of God, history. Abraham have that kind of faith, or was he tending to trust God? Was he just going and providing these sacrifices from time to time, or did he have the faith? So this is a question I ask ourselves. Do I have faith that I claim to have? Am I just showing up on a Sunday morning? Am I just writing a check and assume that means everything's good? Do I have the commitment to lay down my rights and even to trust in God with everything that I have, with everything that I am, with everything that I'm dealing with? We all have our various issues, right? We all have things that we have going on within our homes or our jobs. Am I willing to see the provision of the ram in the bushes? Am I willing to know that God's going to provide a ram in the bushes, and it may come in a way that I don't expect? Or am I just going to see that as am I going to see the ram in the bushes as a promise fulfilled from God, or am I going to see verse 8? Final thing I want to reflect on. Let the promise of God produce. And in your offspring shall all nations of earth be blessed, because you have obeyed. Something powerful here. I don't want it. Because we can read this story. Wow, that's some stuff that Abraham experienced. Wow, okay, I need to grow in my faith, and I need to trust God, and I need to know that He's going to provide for me, and I can stop there. But I think there's something powerful here. Because you see, through Abraham's obedience, other people were blessed. Abraham, other people. Traditionally, the verb that blessed verb and traditionally is taken as a passive, will be. Like they don't have to do anything, they're just going to be blessed. As Abraham's descendants were going to be a channel or a source of blessing to all the nations. However, the actual sense of this verb in says actually a little bit more. Because God is proclaimed that Abraham's obedience become part of all blessing of all nations. Abraham's obedience, the one act of Abraham's obedience, is going to produce blessing for all nations. Think about that in your life. Your obedience to God affecting other people? Or is your obedience to God self-holy? Your obedience to God offering blessing to other people? Can they see Christ in and through you? And if not, then I would like to offer as a thought, maybe you're not being. Your obedience to God is not offering others a blessing, then maybe you're not. This morning we're going to close out with a small reflection song that lead us in. We're going to come to as a family. So we're going to have a little bit of a reflection, and then we're going to sit back down and we're going to have our communion time. And after that, we're going to have another song and short conversation. But I want to ask you this morning, as we have this time of reflection, that you focus on your life, that you focus on your heart, and that you ask God to be a part of your entire life, that you ask God to take focus of your entire life, of your entire perspective, and not just part of it. This morning, as an opportunity for everyone to recommit ourselves to God, to say, God, I am fully committed to you, but God, just in case I left something out, I'm telling you again, I'm all in. I'm all yours. As an opportunity, full self, full obedience to God. But when that test comes, prepared, appropriate. You're prepared by on your faith. You're prepared by on the truth of Scripture that you already know is true. And this morning, and I struggle with that. I want to know how to better buy. I want to ask you, please, talk to me, talk to one of you. Let's talk about what does it mean to trust God with all of the parts of our lives. To allow the Bible, to allow the biblical truth to impact and every part of your daily. Last week, progressively, daily coming closer and closer. We're daily learning more and more. We can reflect God more and more every day. Allow today to be days sanctified. Up another. To pray for us in the song, Cleanse